Hey there, I'm Rod Yates. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned along the way. And my guest today is founding INXS keyboardist and guitarist and now solo artist, Andrew Farriss. There's a song on Andrew's new self-titled solo album called Come Midnight, which was actually written during the sessions for INXS's 1987 album, Kick. As with the rest of his solo record though, it's a far cry from the funk, rock and pop of INXS, with Andrew going down a more traditional country music route. We talk about Andrew's latest career move in this interview, as well as his upbringing and path into music, the rise of INXS and his relationship with Michael Hutchence, what it was like carrying on with the band following Michael's death, and much more. I caught up with Andrew in Sydney at the end of March, the day after he played an intimate club show to launch his solo album, and we started by chatting about the record and his move into country music. From the outside, I guess some people might think, oh, that's strange, Andrew Farriss is writing country music album, but I know your association with the genre actually goes back quite a long way. I think it was about 20 years ago. You produced right. Tanya Kernahan's album, Australian country singer Tanya Kernahan's album, Big Sky Country.
Yeah.
What was your entry point to country music?
Well, I guess that was my sort of official one 20 years ago. And in the role of producer and songwriter, as opposed to performer, which is as well as those things now that I'm doing. But to me, it was really interesting because I didn't know a lot of that community before of players, you know, and I didn't realize the skill sets they all wander around with. And that was a really interesting experience for me because even though I'd met people from the country music genre in other countries besides Australia as well, I never really felt a part of that community until I did that project with Tanya.
Right.
What I found intriguing is combining the worlds that I came from, which is sort of rock and sort of funk and pop stuff with country. And Tanya actually said to me not that long ago, she said, I didn't understand 20 years ago what you were really trying to do. It sounds like country music now. And I said,
right. Okay.
You see. And I said, yeah, that's kind of what I had in my head was that why aren't these fusing more, these forms, you know, like why is this that and that's this and,
Yeah.
you know, now I'm kind of comfortable coming into this genre because the genre used to be quite thin, if I can use that word, and it was a sort of select few that did a select thing, whereas now the country music genre is, you know, really going wide with what it encompasses. And as a songwriter, you know, I'm happier than Larry because I love writing songs.
Yeah.
In Nashville, they say it all begins with a song. So you see, for me, I've sort of like, well, this is fun.
Yeah.
You know, I'm enjoying this now. You know, and I've worked with some amazing musicians, both here in Australia and abroad, and in Nashville. And yeah, I'm having a good time so far. So good.
Yeah, because I know you've done sessions in Nashville for quite some years, and sessions in Tamworth as well, which for anyone outside of Australia is, I guess, Australia's answer to Nashville to an extent.
Yeah.
When did those sessions start? When did you actually start working with people in both places?
Well, that's interesting. First of all, I live not that far from Tamworth, and I find it intriguing because, say, comparing it, the big difference with Nashville is a community of people who live there who do like-minded things, and they don't leave town. Whereas I live near Tamworth, and I'm this guy from INXS who played in a rock, funk, pop band or whatever.
Yep.
You know, and yet I'm the one that had lived there, near there.
Yeah.
You know, I've owned a cattle and grains property there for 30 years this July. And I would see all these people come into town, they all leave again, and I still got my cowboy hat on. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
How hands-on are you on the farm? Because you are, as you said, it's a working farm.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I get my hands dirty and I wash them again, sanitize them, you know. But no, seriously, you know, I work with livestock and I work, you know, we, like I said, it's cattle and grains. We farm it as well.
Yeah. We
do oats, millet, barley, share farm wheat, do all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah, and I find it really interesting, both on a physical, intellectual level.
Yeah.
And it's also great balance, if you like, for the craziness of the entertainment industry and the music world. You know, that can be pretty tricky and slippery, that world.
Yeah.
And, you know, not that farming isn't, but it's just a very different thing. It's very gritty and real.
Yeah.
It's going to decide what happens to you. You know, you like to think you're standing there and, you know, you're in charge of it all. In one sense you are, but all you can try to do is manage whatever Mother Nature throws at you.
That's right.
That's all you can really do,
you
know. Yeah.
So when did you really start to dip your toes into this world that you're in now, in terms of actually being an active part of it and producing music and writing music?
Yeah, good question, Rod. I think, first of all, I've always enjoyed country music. I like the grittiness of the reality of what they talk about in country music, especially older outlaw country and older school country music writers, especially during eras like the Depression and even the Old West when people were writing those old cowboy songs. How it sort of began for me to make this album I've just made, the self-titled album. As I said, I've been a songwriter. I've had a massive international experience with INXS, and we worked in 52 countries. We played on some of the biggest stages and the smallest stages during our career in the world. And during that time, one of the things that I realized was my role with INXS was to, if you like, write a soundtrack the whole time that I always looked at was like a theatre play that was in real time. I felt my role. And just down the street from where you and I are talking right now, there used to be a studio called Rhinoceros Studios, right? And a lot of INXS's biggest recordings were recorded right there, and it brought back some memories as I got out of the cab today.
Right, okay.
Just down the street here. Right?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And Studio 2, which is the old one upstairs, and then downstairs as well.
What did you record there?
Oh, lots of albums. Shabu Shabar, Parts of the Swing,
Okay.
Listen Like Thieves,
Right.
Kick, and X were all recorded down there.
Wow.
In that studio. And I think even Welcome to Wherever You Are, I think,
Okay.
as well. But yeah, we did a lot of work there and, a lot of successful work too with some very, very clever people on board with us, But for me as a songwriter, I've always collected songs. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't necessarily like the songs, but in the old days, with INXS as a band, we'd choose the songs that suited the albums that we were making, at the time. So I might have written songs. I was still happy with them. But they just didn't suit that particular album or, whatever we were doing at the time. And fashion comes into play too. Charts have always been about fashions, what's hip and what isn't, and this is in and that's out and all that other BS,
Yep.
And so when I looked at it carefully as a songwriter, I suddenly started going through a lot of my older demos. And one of those songs, for example, Come Midnight, which ended up on my album, my self-titled album, was actually a song I wrote right towards the end, I think, of the Kick writing period that I was in.
Yep.
But it had nothing to do with that album. It's sort of cowboy music,
Yeah.
But I liked the song, and then I didn't think much about it, and I demoed it. And then my wife, Marlena, who's from the US, she's from Dayton, Ohio, she always put it on her smartphone as a wake-up call. I thought it was funny. Why did she pick that song?
Right.
I didn't ask her to. She just put it on her phone. So I really liked the song.
Yeah.
And literally, I said, "Wake up, silly. She likes the song." You see, I didn't. At first, I thought, "Do I have to listen to that thing every morning?" You know what I mean? And then I suddenly realized she likes it. You idiot. To myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. Why don't I go and look at some other older material and newer songs that I've been writing.
Yeah.
And instead of them being a hodgepodge, sort of mishmash of different eras of recordings or whatever, I'll take them in the studio and re-record all of them.
Right.
In real time in a modern studio, And the nearest singer was me. So I started singing them all over them because I thought later I'll find someone that really knows what they're doing as a singer, But as I started to do it, it was especially the Nashville recording engineers, the country guys I was working with, who were used to recording a lot of country artists. When I said that to them, I said, "Look, I'll get another singer." And they said, "Why do you want to do that, man?" And I said, "Well, because it's me singing." They said, "So we like your voice. Keep singing." So I'm like, "Cool, okay. If they like it, maybe someone else will." You know? I didn't really think about that I was making an album. This is honestly how it happened.
That's a vote of confidence.
See what I mean? So suddenly someone's going, "Hey, we like you," and I'm going, "Oh, okay."
Did you have doubts?
Well, I don't know. I'm no spring chicken, and I'm taking this on kind of back into my life, I suppose you'd say. And so I don't have any illusions. I'm not exactly a young player here. I mean, I feel young, but I'm not. When I took this on, I had a big reality checks at certain points, checkpoints with myself. I say, "Andrew, what are you doing?" You know what I mean? Like reality checks the whole time. And then, but as more
subconsciously, or consciously?
I think subconsciously. But don't worry, my wife will do it to me very consciously, So the thing is, as we went along with all this, one of the trips I did going to Nashville, and Marlena and I decided to take a horse riding trip down to the Mexican border. Before that, I thought, how is Andrew Farriss going to make a solo country album, even if I thought I could? What does it mean to anybody? I don't have any parameters. It's like standing on a white canvas, a very long, wide one, and there's no boundaries. Well, that in itself is kind of not terrifying, but you don't know the parameters that you're actually riding within.
Sure.
But was that horse riding trip, we went down to an area called the Chiricahua Mountains, which is right where the Mexican border and New Mexico and Arizona are. And there's an old cowboy wrangler guy called Craig Lawson. Craig W. Lawson, and he and his wife Tam just are all about horses. That's all they care about.
Right.
And this beautiful wilderness area called the Chiricahua Mountains, where the history of the Apache Indians. You had the U.S. cavalry, and you had the Mexican people, of course, just right across the border there in the mountains. You had the Mexican army in the old days. And up the road's Tombstone with the cowboys and all that history with all those bad guys and good guys, all, sheriffs and outlaws. And then amongst all this, you had the settlers. And we were riding horses for 6 hours a day, 6 days straight.
Wow.
And through these wilderness areas. And you'd see abandoned silver mines and got to see exactly where Geronimo surrendered. Mm-hmm. To the U.S. cavalry, and then Craig took us, the four of us, we rode our horses right up the top of Cochise's stronghold. And there were certain canyons called Skeleton Canyon and these other places, Apache Pass, and, all these areas we were riding around. And there's old abandoned U.S. cavalry forts like Fort Rucker. Mm-hmm. They're still there in the middle of nowhere. It's spooky.
Yeah.
Because that 150 years ago, this was a busy town. There's people everywhere, and suddenly it's not a Hollywood film, is it? It's all very real.
Yeah.
And then I said to Craig, "Is this where the stagecoach used to come?" He goes, "Yeah, being chased by the outlaws and all the rest of it." And I was like, "I'm sitting on a horse, and it was spooky. I was going, I'm getting this now." That was what hit me. And then when I went back to Nashville after seeing all of this, I got in the, as they call it, in the room. And of course, every music genre, it doesn't matter what music genre you're in, everybody wants the same thing. They want success and chart hits, and they want awards to hang on walls, and they want to be famous or whatever it is they want to do. Mm-hmm. But where the light really went on for me was I got back to Nashville. I said, I know what I want to do now. I know what the parameters are going to be on my album. I know how to do this now.
Okay.
And what I need to do is to stay true and respect the cultures of these people. Because you see, the early cowboy history influenced your very early, Roy Rogers liked to ride a horse and play guitar, and it all fell together for me. Then you had Hank Williams during the Depression era. Then you had your Johnny Cash's and Willie Nelson's. We're getting more and more modern as it goes along. But even Willie's going, I just want to be a cowboy. He said his whole life,
Right.
And because what they like is the frontier sense of freedom.
Sure.
Pre-electricity. They loved that idea of that. And I didn't really understand it till I actually lived it for a little while and rode horses and lived in real time in that kind of world. And I went, wow, what an amazing time.
But you're taking these ideas into Nashville writers' rooms.
Yeah, that's right.
Presumably,
at first the older guys kind of got it.
Okay.
Like Frank Myers. And the first song I wrote that really was heading towards what would become my album was Apache Pass.
Right.
And Frank got it. He didn't even question it. He said, I love this, man. This is really different. Nobody wants to write like this anymore.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'm doing it, And he goes, let's do it. And he's my age, and so we wrote that song together, Apache Pass. And we didn't pull any punches. There's a kind of gutsy lyric, I think, on that song.
Sure.
And it's pretty real.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, talking about real lyrics, the song Starlight.
Yeah.
When you first listen to it, you hear the mariachi element, you hear the mariachi influence, and it sounds like an upbeat song, but it's actually it's a song about your wife's battle with breast cancer.
That's right.
And it has the lyric in there, which is so hard to see you face the darkness, staying strong, heaven knows I've tried.
Yeah.
Watching you hurt was the hardest thing to do.
That's right.
What does that song mean to you?
Everything. Marlena's stage 4 metastatic breast cancer journey has been a tumultuous one, not only for her, but for me and her family and my family and our joint families. And we've been very, concerned for her health. But I also think this crazy little cowboy journey I've taken has been great for her as a distraction. She's riding the whole way with me with it,
Nice.
We're on this journey together, So I feel like, I have a true life partner and we're riding through it together, you know. And if you like, and I'm very, very fortunate to have that in my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And is she doing okay?
She's doing okay. Thanks,
Great.
Rod. So far, so good.
We've spoken about the influence of that, particularly that horse trek to the Mexican border and the influence of country music on you. But if you go back even further, right back to your early years of life, I understand that an experience with the Beatles was very influential with you, that you actually got to see them play in London when you were about 5.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you recall
I can
of
see
that?
a little drum kit up there with their logo on it. Well, what happened there was my dad, my father Dennis, met my mum Jill in Western Australia playing tennis. Her dad had been in the Royal Navy, and this is very, very early or late 40s, very early 50s, I think somewhere. I'm not sure exactly when they met. Anyway, Dad hadn't been back to see his parents in London, in Croydon, for 15 years. And back in those days, you didn't get on jets, you know.
Got on boats.
You got on ships, or not at all, you know.
Right.
So he wanted to take my elder brother Tim, myself, Andrew, and my younger brother John. Our younger sister Alison wasn't born at that point. So Dad put us on a ship, and he liked being on ships, you see, when he was in the Navy. He was an aircraft mechanic on aircraft carriers. And had some funny stories too, but anyway. And some not so funny stories when we used to screw up as young fellas, you know. He wouldn't have to, you know, physically do anything to us. He'd just tell us stories about picking up pieces of blokes that walk into aircraft propellers and things. And once you get that picture in your head, you go, I wonder what Dad could do to me. Do you know what I mean? Like
that was the discipline.
Virtually. So I was 5 and a bit, I think, or something. And my older brother Tim was 7 and a bit. And my younger brother John was 3 and a bit. Anyway, we took this ship journey from Perth, which is where we were living as kids. We finally got to London, and Dad took us to a variety show, and out walked the Beatles, and they just started playing. Everyone's going bananas and crazy in a room.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's this all about?
You had no understanding. You were 5. You had no understanding.
I was like, what's this, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's us standing there in our little polished black shoes with long white socks and grey shorts and whatever we had on back then, you know?
Yeah.
And listening to one of the greatest bands ever, you know, it's right in front of us, you know? It was surreal. But the Beatles themselves, to me, it was also obscure because I'd never seen a proper rock band before, you know?
Yeah.
I said, what's this, you know? And then afterwards, many years later, Tim and I talked to our father, Dennis, about it because we were like, Dad, what was all that about? You know? And he goes, oh, yeah, and you went and talked to him too.
And
I'm like,
can't
what
remember it.
are you talking about? You know, well, not really, no, but apparently we were saying, and probably because we were little kids, they were perfectly happy to talk to us, you see?
Yeah.
Because we didn't really want anything. We were just staying there, you know?
Yeah.
To them, they would have thought, oh, yeah, we'll chat with these little kids. Why not? What the hell, you know? And all these years later, I've thought about that too, and I thought it's very strange, all that, because then INXS became such a big band. And I would love to have told, you know, well, I can only tell, I suppose, Ringo or Paul that now. I'd love to tell them.
Yeah.
I saw you blokes when I was 5.5 and it was my first band, and here we are talking to each other all these years later. And
wow.
Yeah, I think that had a big influence on myself and my brothers. Of course, the real kicker was when, you know, I learnt piano at 9, and then I had another bizarre experience, really. I suppose I was a precocious little shit, really, because I started learning piano, doing classical scales, the normal things that everyone was doing back then in the 1960s. And I'd rather play football. I just got really bored with it. And I think Mum was really upset because she thought I was pretty good on the piano. But I said, yeah, but I'm over it. You know, I've done that, and I feel like I want to, you know, just play footy with my mates. You know, I don't want to do this. And one day I hurt myself. I jumped off a fence and really hurt I think I fell on a couple of nails, rusty nails that had fallen out of a fence or something.
Wow.
And while I was recuperating, Mum came in and cleverly said to me, well, you're not playing much footy now, are you? And I said, no, I'm not. She said, why don't you go back and learn the piano again? I thought about it. I thought, yeah, all right. And then when I did that, I also taught myself I snuck into my brother Tim's bedroom and used to pick up his guitar, and I taught myself to play guitar.
Okay.
Sort of around the same time. But while this was going on, I said to Mum, look, I really want to play piano again. I'd like to learn to play piano again, but I don't want to follow the same road that everyone else does, where they play a set bunch of music, usually classical. I like to learn some pop songs and modern rock, whatever that was back then, Creedence or whatever it would have been, you know, or jazz and R&B stuff. And she said, oh. So she found this Japanese lady, and I don't know her name to this day, who used to sit with me and showed me how harmony works on the piano.
Right.
Like, in other words, you take a C major chord and you get the minor is the related chord to a C major, right?
Uh-huh.
And then suddenly this whole landscape began to open with me, where I suddenly thought, I don't have to play someone else's music. I can create my own music.
Yeah.
She only made one prerequisite, said you have to do Hanon, which is scales, da, 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 like that, like this.
Yeah.
Like sort of go. That kind of thing, you know. Learning those skill sets was the proviso for me to be able to get away with being precocious and, you know, being a brat. But all of this stuff led to me then wanting to write music. And so, you know, you asked me a question earlier. You said, well, why did I just start singing and why wasn't I doing it with INXS and all that? I didn't really need to. I had one of the best lead singers in the world in a band.
That's right.
Well, why did I need to do that? You know what I mean? And why would I need to compete with that? I see in other bands over the years, you get this competitive thing running where they have similar skill sets. You say you'll have say for example, the Beatles, you'll have two of those guys. They're both so talented. Say all of them really are and were talented. All the guys in that band, but particularly I suppose John Lennon and Paul McCartney were just prolific.
Yeah.
Always writing, you know.
Yeah.
But they had very similar skill sets in one sense, you know what I mean? They weren't exactly the same kind of writer, and then I suppose it became competitive in the end. Whereas I never really thought of that when I was with INXS. I just thought my role was to write for the group of people.
Yeah.
And if they wanted to write or do something different or whatever, then that's fine. You go do that, you know.
Yeah.
But I know what my job is and I'm doing my job best I can, you know.
Nice. Speaking of INXS, obviously the Farriss brothers forms in the late 70s and morphs into INXS. And one of the things I'm always fascinated about that period in Australian history is the pub scene back then seemed so vibrant. You had acts such as yourself, Midnight Oil, Rose Tattoo, The Angels, Cold Chisel, all playing pubs around Sydney and around Australia. But it also sounds like the Wild West. Like I've spoken to people like Angry Anderson from Rose Tattoo, and he's told a story about his tour manager having to pull a gun on a promoter to actually get paid. I've spoken to people from The Angels, and they've talked about gigs that are so packed, so oversold and so packed that the promoter chains up the fire exit so that no one can actually break into the gig through the fire stairs. Like all these things that are it sounds like a lawless time. But what were your experiences of the pub rock scene?
I think they've summed it up beautifully. It was crazy, you know. I remember one night, I think INXS was supporting Midnight Oil. They were always really, good to us. Same with Cold Chisel and the Angels, that they helped us, get where we were going to, and we all kind of did help each other in a weird way. As much as we were competitive, we all knew we were in it together, and I think really we were all at the starting gate together, and none of us really knew if any of this crazy Wild West pub scene was going to have a burn overseas, because the moment we turned up in the United States, that first tour we did, the early months of 1983, we suddenly realised this isn't the pub scene in Australia. This is completely different.
How so?
Well, they have a dressing room, not a change room.
Right.
With sweaty clothes.
Yep.
Purpose-built entertainment facilities for entertainers. It's professional. Well, sure, they've got gritty bars and they've got smoky pool rooms and all that stuff, but it had a different flow to it.
Okay.
But even then, the thing that impressed me is I could never figure out with some pub gigs we were playing in Australia if the audience actually liked you or not, because they just go along and see anybody.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And some bands were more popular than others, but they just go along because they like going to the pub. And if you happen to be playing, then you were standing there playing to them. And so it was pretty threatening sometimes to play these environments where everyone was drinking, smoking cigarettes in those days, and there was often, fist fights going on, and people got quite serious about it all. And you're up there playing, and it's a bit like a barroom scene in an old Western film. That's right. Exactly the same. And crazy, Whereas when we turned up, say, like I said, in the US, you have these purpose-built entertainment facilities, or it could be air-conditioned, and everyone knew exactly what was going on.
Right.
And also the audiences were a bit more purpose-driven, and we were fortunate too because we were on MTV. They liked our videos the moment we INXS turned up in the United States. So before long, we'd say go to play a show in Texas or something, and we'd have fans coming along.
Right.
We weren't used to that either.
Yeah.
The big boys back in Australia were Midnight Oil and the Angels and Cold Chisel and all these people. And next minute, we're staying there with this large group of people coming to see us,
Yeah.
And that went on and on and on and on. We did 13 3-month tours like that just in the 80s.
We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, Andrew talks about the rise of INXS and life after Michael Hutchence. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Andrew Farriss. Before the break, Andrew was talking about the differences between touring Australia and America when INXS was starting out. And we pick up the conversation with Andrew talking about the band's first ever trip to the US.
And the first tour we did, the bus we were in had 14 blokes in it, and you have like a coffin type bed, basically, with it, and they pump a little bit of air into it, and that's how you sleep.
Yeah.
And then the bus nearly hit an overpass, concrete overpass. A bus driver fell asleep. And then the bus almost turned completely over. It was half on its side, and it was filling up with diesel smoke, and it was snowing outside, and it was blowing like sleet everywhere. And of course, you don't have necessarily pajamas on. You might just have your undies or nothing at all, right? So you go outside and you're effing freezing. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just a gale blowing.
Yeah.
In the snow area, right? And everyone's shaking and shivering because you get back on the bus, it's dangerous, could burst into flames, right?
Yeah.
And that was the first tour we did. The first 3-month tour we did was like that. So we'd suddenly gone from the Wild West bar pub scene in Australia, and we're suddenly discovering there are other difficulties facing us now.
Okay.
That are, when you're not that well known in the US, most people I don't think talk about what I'm about to talk about very much. A lot of your success in those years, if you were a US-based band, it was so much easier because you just ride around in your own country with these purpose-built entertainment facilities. When you come from Australia, just to get to Los Angeles, for example, was, back then it could have been more than, there was usually 2 flights too.
Right.
And they're expensive. You can't afford it because you're a pub band.
Yeah.
So just to get there in the first place is a major logistical hurdle, and financial one too. And when you turn up, you then, the only people that you see and know for 3 months are the people either you're in the band with or the people who are working with or for you. Mm. And they are the only people you know. You don't have any friends or family or anything. That's the ball breaker, you see, as an artist. I worked out at one point, I lived for 3 years on a tour bus with everybody. Wow. And they were the only people we saw was each other. Dad said to me one day, "What are you guys doing all the time when you're doing all this? Because you're not on stage that long." He said, "Oh, we chase girls around, drink beer." And he goes, "Yeah, it sounds like being in the Navy, mate," he says to me. So, right, he got it,
Okay.
And it was ironic because I think when I look back at that period, I think INXS was a great band, and we got better and better and better, I think, as a band. But in those early years, what really got us through was that tenacity to keep going back when things weren't so good for us.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. But we all did it together, and that's why I see some other bands have had a pretty quick ride to success, and I feel sorry for them a bit because they don't know what's coming at them. Success, strangely enough, it can either be a wonderful thing or a complete nightmare, depending on what actually is happening to you, But to have it suddenly thrown at you, I felt fortunate that we had to really work hard to get there with that as a group of people. Because when we finally got there, we're like, okay, all right, we saw how it arrived. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
You could see the train coming down the tracks rather than suddenly it's hitting you,
Well, you talk about that, that brotherhood, both literal and metaphorical in INXS, which is solidified through those 13 3-month tours. When you do break through, really break through, 6 albums in with Kick, and things just explode. How does that affect the band? How does that affect the dynamic in the band?
Well, INXS actually burst its own bubble because we got to that stadium level as a band, around the world, not just in England where we played Wembley. That's just one stadium. We played them around the world. And during those years, we recognised pretty quickly that one of the more scary elements of that lifestyle is that you have this gravy train of people who all depend on you to keep doing it. If you don't keep doing it, then they don't have their jobs and life satisfaction, and their own thing gets suddenly put in jeopardy, So you're suddenly thinking, why am I doing this exactly? Who's this for? And I think for all of us, we began to talk about it quietly amongst ourselves. And we all decided, let's not just make, oh gosh, we have to play at a stadium or we're no good anymore. Yeah. Let's just play places we really like to play. Okay. If it's a festival, great. If it's a stadium, fantastic. If it's an arena, that's okay. If it's a pub, great. But as long as we like the venues, theatre, whatever it is, you know. And then we said, okay, let's do it. And we made that decision,
When was that?
I think that would have been around about 93, somewhere around there. Yeah, somewhere around there. And then we actually did what we called a pub tour through England, playing pubs. Yeah. Even after we just played stadiums. Yeah. And now all the promoters couldn't understand it. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. I said, we're doing what we want to do. Not what we're supposed to do. We're doing what we want to do.
That gets harder, I imagine.
It does.
The bigger you get, the harder that gets.
That's right. It's in the record company's interest for you to keep getting bigger and bigger, and they make more money, and everyone's making more money when you do more and more and more. But are you any happier? Don't know. And again, that was a journey thing that we experienced when we went to the US, is you realise pretty quickly that, okay, but at some point you got to call it. It's like playing cards. You got to put your cards down, and say this is what you really believe in at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have to develop coping skills when things go when stadiums become the norm?
Well, let me put it this way, and we already talked about this a little bit, but the things that are going on in your life with your family, your friends, or your health or whatever, all comes into this equation. This conversation is all part of the same conversation. It's not just about music and fame and chart hits or whatever. It's about how you're coping as a human being, just life. And it also is very important to me as a songwriter that I focus on life matters, because if you're not living a life within real time, how can you write songs that will appeal to people? They're not going to believe in what you're writing about because you're making stuff up. You got to write something that's real, and then people will say, "Okay, I can relate to that." You know? But I think for us as a group of people, I think I respect them because I know what they did because I did it with them. Those people, are amazing people, and I know what we went through. I remember there was a period of time for me personally where I was living in England for nearly 5 years, and 2 of my 3 children were born there, and in those years, it was very difficult because, as much as I enjoyed my time living in England, also my mother was having her own breast cancer experience, which didn't end well for her back in Australia. And I had no choice but to be in England because I'd based my family there. And the band was, very, very, very successful at that point and become quite famous. And I remember I started getting claustrophobic in aircraft, and I couldn't work out what was happening to me. And then I went and saw someone from Qantas, a shrink or something. I said, I just want to know what's going on. And they said, what's going on in the back end of your life? I said, I'm this world-famous rock band, and my mum's dying of cancer. And I have young children born in a foreign country, and like you are now, they're nodding and looking at me and smiling, going, well, there's your problem, mate, right there, you see. And most people don't think of musicians, especially if they're very famous people, in these terms. They just think of them as cardboard cutouts who live in some weird fantasy world of your entertainment.
Yeah.
But their real lives are exactly the things that are like anybody else, just anybody in life. There's things affecting them.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that when you're slogging it out, trying to make it, you probably don't think of yourself. You just see the golden ball at the end going, we've got to make it. Well, you kind of think that perhaps once you get to that point, you've got the perfect life too.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything as so much as a perfect life. I think we all have, all of us, sharing the human experience, are all going through the similar. You question things, you look at things, you have good days, bad days. This is the way life is. And then you've got that random dice rolling about your health the whole time. But, like I said originally when we started this interview, that's what led me towards agriculture as well. Having lived out of so many concrete boxes in my life. And but in the end, you're sort of like, well, what are the fundamentals of life? Well, it's got to be family, food, water, and a roof over your head.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, I don't know. Someone tell me what that's all about, especially technology right now.
Yeah,
I wish someone would explain to me where this is all heading because I don't know.
No, it's unknown.
There you go.
The whole
it's
thing.
a frontier, isn't it?
It is.
And then the people say, well, why are you doing this Old West thing, this frontier thing? I was going, because that's an era I can actually understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You performed a song last night, My Brother, which you co-wrote with John Stevens.
Yeah.
A deeply moving song written, I guess, about people, particularly male figures who you've lost in life.
That's right.
Through suicide. And John's brother being one, and obviously Michael Hutchence being the one that affected you. And it occurred to me last night as I watched that this many years on, it's still incredibly raw for you, his passing.
Well, I think, one of the sadder things that comes along with a quick loss for people with family and friends and these sorts of things is that you don't get time to say goodbye to them and reconcile it. They're just gone. Some people, it affects them differently. Some people become like steel doors and just don't want to think about it. Other people become emotionally wrecked with it. Some people get angry about it, for various reasons. And some people can never reconcile it, For me, I just like to think of, if I meditate on that subject, for me personally, I just miss Michael, the happy side of the guy and the talented side of that man. And he had a cheeky side to him too that was funny, off camera, off mic. Just, when you're being just normal people in a room, he could be a funny guy,
Right.
And it's those sort of memories I hold in my mind rather than going down the rabbit hole of tragedy,
Sure.
So that I don't know how else to explain that.
And one of those memories I'd like to ask you about is writing Never Tear Us Apart with Michael.
Right.
What can you even put into words? Can you take me back into that?
Sure. Well, actually, Michael and I, as you probably know, wrote the Kick album together. And the way we worked was, of course, I'd had my music skills on the piano and guitar and some other instruments, but those two main instruments. But I also wrote lyrics. I wrote some of the INXS's first lyrics we ever had as singles and things. But I always knew Michael was a very, very gifted lyricist. And the more successful INXS got, the more it became very important for Michael to write lyrics, And so that's the way we worked. And because he never played an instrument. Some people don't realize that either. He didn't play an instrument. And so when we would get together, we weren't competitive. We had perfectly diametrically opposed skill sets to get in a room together. Right. He needed me and I needed him in one sense because he's an awesome singer. He always was a great singer. I'm still in awe of him as a singer. I sing, but not the way he did. He did something else. And, to me, I'm more of a storyteller when I'm singing. I'm just telling stories. Right? I can't show off like Michael used to be able to do, He was like a dragon on fire, that guy, And he soared at the highest heights possible before the outer atmosphere of Earth, But the other thing that's funny about our writing, I'll take Never Tear Us Apart, is most of it was I don't know how to put it. We didn't sit together like I've done in professional writing sessions, in inverted commas, I do, with people now, co-writes and things where, they have a clock, like, good morning, Sam, good morning, Chris. They turn the clock on and when 4 hours is up, you either got it or not. Yeah, see you, mate. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like that with me and Michael at all. The way we worked was very, very, very smooth in one sense where, for example, Never Tear Us Apart, I already had the chords and I knew what I wanted the modulations and even that down, 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 all that little riff and all that stuff. I had it in my mind exactly what I wanted to do. So we were on tour in New Zealand, I think, where we were. And we were at the A&R record company's home. And his name, I'm not making this up, his real name was Jimi Hendrix, okay? Don't ask me why. Anyway, so he had a tennis court out there and, the band and other people were playing tennis, This must have been around about 87, I guess, 80s, late 86, I don't know anymore. Anyway, so we're there and I showed him on the piano my idea for the song for Never Tear Us Apart. And he said, I like that. But he was going in and out because he was a social creature, Michael, a bohemian social creature is what he was. And he said, I'll be right back, because he'd rather be out talking to people. And I go, sure. And but he did come back and I was sitting there and he goes, just play that again. So I played it again and I could see him thinking about it. And the next minute he'd turn up. See, this is the way we used to work. He'd turn up at my little flat that I was living in those years. And he goes, what do you think of this? And he'd just sing it to me. And I go, you're kidding me, right? I knew it when I heard it. Goosebumps. Yeah. I just went, what's that? You know what I mean? And because he wasn't musically trained, a lot of people are very curious about our songwriting. The real key to our success is because we didn't write like a lot of other people do. We weren't competitive. Yeah. We had diametrically opposed skill sets. Yeah. And he would talk in terms of, when he was talking music, that should be a bit heavier. That needs to be a bit bluer, a bit more blue. Right. This over here, it's it needs something. And I go, okay, and I'd try to think of something, or lyrically, I'd throw an idea in occasionally, to him, and he was very sure that he wanted to always, lyrically say something. And he was passionate about that, and I respected that. The benefit I didn't see coming all these years later, that's part of the reason I have a solo album out now, is because I had a great storage of lyrics because I didn't need to use them back then. Okay. And a lot of people don't sort of quite get that either. Like, where did all this come from? I said, I was always doing it. I didn't ever feel that it was the right time. I feel like I'm doing what I'm doing now, and it's supposed to be happening. I know that sounds like a really strange thing to say. Not at all. Because someone said to me the other day, why didn't you put out some stuff 20 years ago? I said, I just didn't want to do it. I didn't feel it was the right time for me to do that. I was more interested in producing other artists, and I wanted to immerse myself in other people's worlds. Sure. What they think of life. Yep. Not me. Yeah. Life's not all about Andrew Farriss, I've always written and tried to write about things that are real and as much as possible, put reality into things.
Yeah. From Michael's passing up till the band's final show in 2012, you had, I guess you tried several singers and you did the Rockstar INXS TV show in the States as well. Was your heart in it throughout that whole period? Was it as difficult to be as passionate about the band throughout some of those years?
I did find that phase very difficult, and I'll explain why. I wasn't so much opposed to the idea of doing a television show, because that was the first television show, I think, the first reality television show where real musicians had played on live stages.
Right.
And we insisted on it. It wasn't going to be a karaoke, that we wanted it to all be very, very real. And then you have to be playing, singing, whether it's us or the house band or whoever it is, it all needs to be real. And then we'll do it. But the other part of it was that there was some, serious songwriting people, once they heard that we were involved in it, had agreed to let the people from the television show use their songs, whereas previously they hadn't let them. People like Bob Dylan, Nirvana, Pink Floyd, some heavies,
Right.
Went, sure, we'll let our catalogues into this.
Okay.
Because INXS are involved in it, Queen and all that,
Yeah.
Then I thought, well, if they give us that kind of respect, why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just huge,
Absolutely.
enormous thing,
Yeah.
Especially as a songwriter, So for me, I thought, okay, I can do this. And but I did hide a bit, had my beard, and I tried to wear dark glasses a lot because I just felt, I'm not a TV guy.
Sure.
I'm a musician, I'm a songwriter. I don't know about this acting stuff, Feel left to center from me as a person. But the other guys in the band were brilliant at it. They loved it. Yeah, I think they really got into it, Especially my older brother Tim was genius at it, TV,
Yeah.
But I think, for me, there was another scary element to this. I got to say that. I was genuinely scared, where I didn't know whether we were going to have a male or female singer.
Okay.
Because I was completely open-minded about
who
would become an INXS singer. And to me, it wasn't just a given that it'd be a male figure. That wasn't a given at all. To me, it could have been a female singer. In fact, I think that would have been amazing in some ways because in my mind, there would have been no band in modern history that had ever swapped genders on a singer.
Right. Well, you did have Susie DeBarkey from the Baby Animals sang for you.
Well, I was trying hard to make that happen earlier on.
Okay.
Because, and that seems to have been part of my destiny. I seem to do well when I'm the first to do something. That always seems to work well for me in my life. I don't like being at the back end of things. I like being at the beginning of things, But to me, I thought the band did a great job with all of that. And I thought JD did a great job too. We had a very successful tour and album, especially in North America. Not so much outside of North America, but in North America, and Canada, obviously, we had a really big experience with all of that. But I tell you the really scary part for me with all of it was because I didn't know whether we were going to have a male or female singer or identity out front for INXS. I had to write songs that would have suited a female and a male singer.
Okay.
That was challenging for me.
Okay.
I got to say, that was hard. And I actually got quite sort of a bit nervous or scared, suddenly realising, I hope I'm doing the right thing here, because we're suddenly going to find that this person who we have no idea who they really are is standing there and we're making an album with them, And that's where my work as a record producer started to come in. I started thinking, think like a record producer, Andrew. Don't think like a guy in a band. You'll get through this, you see.
Okay.
Because then I thought, if I think like a record producer, I'll just think, okay, I'll be a bit more lateral with it and logical and say, well, I need to assemble a collection of songs that would suit a female artist and the right keys that would suit female voices. I need to assemble a range of songs that would suit, and a male voice. And also the lyrics need to be able to suit what a woman can sing or a man can sing that doesn't make them sound or look silly, that it's appropriate, So all that was running through my mind during the television show. It just wasn't just about sitting around on television. It was about, for me, it was very spooky where I felt a little bit lonely through that. I felt like I don't think anyone really understands what I'm feeling with this. I'm a bit nervous about it,
Okay. Did you see the future? Did you see a future with it? Did you think that this could lead to, that this will be our second phase?
I mean, I'm grateful for all the singers that have put their hands up over the years to sing with and for INXS, including Jimmy Barnes.
Yeah.
He was an early starter.
Yeah.
Love Jimmy. Terence Trent D'Arby.
Yeah.
When we opened Sydney Stadium there. That was nerve-wracking too. Diesel's done some singing with INXS, with Jimmy once, and of course John Stevens, and JD, and Susie DiMarchi. And there was, there's a joke running in the media for a while, who's the lead singer of INXS, but I look at it slightly differently. That's funny, but at the same time I think to myself, how lucky are we that these great singers want to sing with a band?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So you think about the past 9 years now from the band finishing to now here you are with your first solo album, with your name on it.
Sure.
Do you feel more naked putting an album out with your own name?
I like I said earlier, I'm really grateful that my wife Marlena signed on for the trip with me.
Okay.
Because she's a part of everything that I'm doing. While she's not exactly, part of sort of so much the music and songwriting and all that, she's definitely a part of the stylization of what I'm doing, and she's been awesome at it. Including the videos that I'm putting out, and the photography and artwork and all that kind of stuff. And that's been really, really good for me because, like I talked about earlier, we both are thinking along the same lines of styling what I'm doing, both now, musically and visually. It's all coming together properly. Like the lyrics on my album, they all flow in and out of each other. If you actually listen to all the lyrics, and you work out what I'm singing about, or you read them, you'll realize they kind of relate to each other in a funny way. All these lyrics, like they've concepts like Run Baby Run's a song about freedom. For the lost and disillusioned in life. And same with drifting. That's you don't have to be homeless to want to drift around. You can just enjoy the idea of feeling free. It's not a cliche. You're allowed to do that. If you're not allowed to do that, you're living in a society that's got a lot of problems.
You said something last night on stage, which was no one gets through life without help. And that kind of ties in a little bit with what Jaxsta is about, which is giving credit where credit is due. Are there people that you would give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
The list is so long, I don't know where to begin, Rod.
Sure.
You're helping me right now. You're talking to me, asking all these questions. But sure, my parents, my brothers, my sister, my immediate family, my children, and my beautiful wife, Marlena, and my children, Grace, Josie, and Matthew. My extended family, both in the US and in England and in Australia. Lots of friends I have. Again, another person that sang with INXS is Kieran Gribben, and I'm sorry, Kieran, don't misplace Kieran amongst this, right? Okay. Kieran Gribben is a great bloke and he's a great songwriter too, Grammy nominated for a song he did for Madonna. Kieran, I like one of his sayings too, which is you can't have enough friends, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to offend someone and create a lifelong person that doesn't like you, but you can't have enough friends.
Nice.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Rod, and safe travels, and keep your eyes fixed where the trail meets the sky.
Okay, good advice. And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Andrew for his time, and thank you for listening. This episode was recorded at New Holland Studios in Darlinghurst and mixed and engineered by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale. The theme song and incidental music were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.